Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu khataman nabiyyin wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, welcome to episode 4 of the short talks that we are giving on the call of Abraham, peace be upon him, which was the call for the Hajj to make the pilgrimage. And this series of 10-minute talks will look at this call of Abraham from the Bible and the Quran. And so we are now in episode 4. We were talking about in the last episode that the Bible points to Arabia. And we're going to be giving some proof of this, some evidence, some references. Remember, the whole idea is to find that common ground that we are talking about. We believe, and the Quran tells us that we are all the children of Adam. See the banner tree of humanity, Adam and Eve, and the nations and tribes and everyone. But especially the Abrahamic branch, Jews, Muslims, Christians, we are the people of the book, the Ahl Kitab. Yes, so what we're going to go now is, we also showed you the last episode, the old map of the Middle East. You can see it's a very, very old map. That's how, maps keep changing with time. And you see where Arabia is, and you see Egypt on the left, the Red Sea, Jerusalem, next to Egypt is Gaza, which is Palestine. And so this is the area we're talking about. And there was this movement, traveling between Egypt, Palestine, which is, Jerusalem, and Arabia, Mecca, where the Kaaba was in the valley of Baca. So, interesting enough, in Galatians chapter 1, verse 17 and 18, it is stated that even Paul went to Arabia. And here's the quotation: "And neither went I up to Jerusalem to them which were apostles before me, but I went into Arabia and returned again unto Damascus." Now, if you go back to our slide there, he's talking about Damascus. Now, if you look at to the right, of Babylon, what is written as Old Babylon, that area, although it's written Babylon, that's part of Syria now. You understand? We came to today, we know it as Syria, but they were traveling in all these areas. That was the old map of the Middle East, and these caravans used to move. The prophets were, Middle Eastern prophets moved all along. I mean, if you look at, for instance, Babylon, below Babylon, there is another Babylon you see there. You see there below the big Babylon, there's Damascus there. Now, Damascus, right, is in Syria. So if you see below the big Babylon, so what Paul is saying, to go to Arabia, he had to go via Damascus, which is today Syria, and then you see Jerusalem. This was the land of the Israelite prophets. Now, I just want to show you the close proximity, to Arabia and how the prophets used to travel. And so, therefore, Paul says, I went into Arabia, but I returned again into Damascus. So this is a very, intertwined area. And that is why not only geographically, not only historically, but even in terms of religious dimension, and in terms of the prophets that were sent to this area, these prophets all were preaching the same message. Although they were Israelite prophets, right? Most of them came to Israel today's, but at that time Palestine, they were all preaching the same message. And when the last prophet came, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was carrying on with the same message. Let's take another slide. Let's go to the next slide. And Arabia is also mentioned in the Bible. Now we're getting a bit more deeper to show you that, as I said, some people may not be aware. They're thinking that how does Arabia fit into, to the story of Christians and Jews? Arabia is the Arabs, and we got nothing to do with them. Now look at in Isaiah 21, chapter 13 and to 17. What does the prophet Isaiah, peace be upon him, say? The burden upon Arabia. In the forest in Arabia shall you lodge, O you traveling companions of Jidanim. Now that's a verse in the Bible. That's the prophet Isaiah, peace be upon him, speaking long, long before the prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came. What is it showing us? It is showing us that the burden upon Arabia means Arabia is part of God's plan. See, and the Bible is telling us this, that there will come a time that, you see, burden in this sense, prophets had to carry the message. They had the responsibility to give the message to mankind. It's a burden. It's not an easy task. They have to go through abuse, they have to go through persecution, even banishment from their own, town and their own home. And this is, many prophets went through this. And so it becomes a burden to do the work of a prophet and to go through this abuse. So now Isaiah is talking about the burden upon Arabia. I just want to mention another point about this whole thing about Hajj. We're going to talk. Remember, this series, The Call of Abraham, is the call of Hajj. We're going to come to the Hajj proper. Remember, we said as we're going, these are daily 10-minute talks. But we're locating it in the broad scheme of things. We're looking at it historically. We're setting down the parameters and the foundation to show it's not just something out of the blue. It's very deep. It's very deep rooted in the Bible, the whole concept of Arabia and Hajj. It's only when you open and study it, Muslims get surprised and Christians get surprised when you tell them about it. I just got one question to ask. The Muslims may know this, the Muslim viewers who are watching may know this, and some of those who are not Muslim, who have been studying about Islam. Remember when the Prophet, peace be upon him, went to Medina, after the persecution, we just said about the burdens the prophets had to go. The Prophet, peace be upon him, was also, the attempt were made to kill him, and he was driven out. He was driven out of his birthplace in Mecca, where the Kaaba is. He was so attached to the Kaaba, the house that Abraham built, his great-great-grandfather. But he had to leave, because they wanted to kill him. And when he reached Medina, there were so many Jewish tribes in Medina. And those who study Islamic history know this. The Banu Qaynuqa, the Banu Nadir, there's so many Jewish tribes where very few were in Mecca, but many, many, many of these Jewish tribes, big settlements, were in Medina. The question we must ask is why? How come there were so many Jewish tribes in Medina? Well, the answer is here, looking at you on that slide. What is you traveling companions of Didanim? If you go into a Bible encyclopedia and click Didanim and look up Didanim, and Didanim is actually pointing particularly, to Tima and to the Medina. And the Israelite, the children of Israel, the Jews at that time, they knew, according to their Bible, that the final prophet is going to settle not just in Arabia. They knew which part. Arabia has many cities. Like if I say you're going to settle in South Africa, which town in South Africa? There are so many towns and so many cities, right? But the Kaaba was in Mecca, yes, Bakka or Mecca. But they were not there. They finally went and settled in Medina, which was 600 kilometers approximately away from Mecca, the house that Abraham built, where the Muslims go for Hajj. Why? Is because their scriptures were pointing to them very clearly, in no uncertain terms, that final messenger that is to come will end up in Medina. And they were there awaiting his arrival. And this is quite an interesting point, to know when we're talking about Arabia in the Bible, Makkah in the Bible, and even Medina in the Bible. And so I think this, once we start to locate all these, we went through this verse in the book of Psalms, chapter 84, verse 6, passing through the valley of Bakkah. And Makkah and Bakkah, even the Quran uses the word Bakkah for Makkah interchangeably. And this comes through because of different languages, the pronunciation. But we're talking about the simple. And the landmark is, what is the landmark? They make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also covered the pool, which means there was that well. And that is another landmark. The mountains of Safa and Marwa, where Hajra alayhi salam, she was running between those mountains, which the Bible mentions. She was in this valley of Bakkah, which the Quran mentions as well. These landmarks are still existing till today. The mountains of Safa and Marwa are there. The well of Zamzam is still there, pointing to the fact that this is no other place it's talking about, that Hajj and the Bible and Makkah and Zamzam are all mentioned in the Bible. So yes, till we meet again for the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.